Hello, this presentation is created by Group 2, which consists of Lucas, Gabriella, Alyssa, Brielle, and myself, Maggie. The layout for this presentation starts with an intro given on the next slide, which is then followed by our abstract. Each one of our group members will be talking about their personal pros and cons of online learning. We will also include pros and cons from a professor's point of view. Additional information is given on the graphs, lockdown browsers, online learning statistics, burnout and stress, and the long-term learning online slides. We then will give some recommendations followed by our conclusion, and then in our references and bibliography, we'll talk about the sources used throughout the presentation. First of all, I want to start by thanking you for taking your time out of your day to educate yourself on the hardships and benefits of online learning. We hope that you can walk away with more knowledge to understand what our community is going through in this time of adjustments. It is important to note that everyone handles change differently, and make sure you check up on your friends and family.
Our abstract. By interviewing and researching the effects of online learning for students, we can see its positive and negative effects. After conducting thorough interviews of students from our own personal experiences, you will see the positive and negative effects of online learning. The importance of our research is to inform individuals about the changes in learning caused from the pandemic. The implications of online learning can now affect those entering the workforce with degrees in the future. The scope of the project is to understand the hardships and benefits that have come from online learning. Some students have enjoyed learning from home, whereas others have the lack of social interaction. Through this study, we have become more aware of how students view online learning by interviewing several students. We want to educate those who are not in school to understand what is going on in our school systems and how students are handling these sudden changes that they have no control over. One type of evidence that will be used in interviewing our classmates on how they have viewed online learning. We want to make sure we interview multiple students of all ages to get a better understanding and perspective. Online learning has been around for a while, but not on such a large scale with people forced to study online. Online learning can be difficult, but with a lot more studying and dedication, it is possible to get good grades and understand the material. My own personal view of online learning from a student's perspective, the flexible scheduling allows me to work multiple jobs as well as going to school full-time and maintain a social life. It's also easier for me to study alone with no distractions. Some classes are more focused on having us write papers or take tests at home, which can help us to learn the material better. And saving on gas money and parking is a huge plus. Cons, group projects are more difficult to get everybody on the same page. More people do the work for the classes because we don't have any in-classroom teaching. Class discussions are not as in-depth or enriching, and not getting the experience of the college learning environment kind of sucks. It is also harder to get help from fellow students in the class who have no clue who you are.
Some of my pros that weren't mentioned before were having a more flexible schedule, doing my work ahead of time, so I'm not lacking working at my own pace. And some cons were you can't meet the professor or the students doing the project. Presenting was tough because how everyone is at different places, and hard not being able to talk about the ideas in depth.
So my pros were that my schedule tended to be more flexible, just like the others stated. I tend to get stressed out when I have to drive downtown in winter semesters, so it was good to not have to worry about that for this semester. I like to be able to hang out with my friends, and online learning gives me that ability to do that. Some cons that were already mentioned were that I don't get to have that personal relationship with my professors and with my classmates.
Some of my pros that were not mentioned prior were that the online tutoring presence is very strong, allowing students to succeed. I appreciate how communication is done through email and other platforms like Blackboard, which is very accessible for students. Some cons that were mentioned are that many students struggle with difficult home environments, and that's the last place that they want to do school. Technology can be sketchy. This can be troubling for students, and many of them don't have the blessing of internet access, which can trouble their achievement in classes.
Some of my own personal pros and cons: being able to work on my own time. Professors tend to be more forgiving and empathetic. I can do my classwork from the comfort of my own home, so that saves me gas money and potentially my own life. Undeveloped relationships with professors and fellow students as a con, and also communicating over the internet is much more difficult. and retaining information online takes much longer compared to in person.
Online teaching from our professor's perspective is that she said it's difficult to convey information to students through an online platform. It's difficult to get students to participate. Building relationships with students is difficult. Some pros is that it's a blessing to have more flexibility from home, no skipped lunches. The online schedule has allowed her to explore teaching other classes and be more flexible, and the best part is to wear comfy clothes like sweats all day. Another article that explains a teacher's perspective of online learning states that one of the main struggles is alienation. Teachers feel disconnected from their students. They no longer can tell if their students understand material because they can't see their facial expressions. Another issue teachers state is isolation. Students and teachers miss opportunities of interacting with each other and their peers.
All right, now we're going to be looking at some different graphs. This graph will show how the shift to online learning and change in environment has impacted college students. About 70 college students were interviewed and asked to respond to the given statements. I feel like the COVID-19 pandemic has negatively impacted my learning environment. Everybody strongly agreed with only 4 people neutral. I feel more stressed out at home. The overwhelming majority strongly agreed, with a few neutrals and 7 people disagreeing. I am doing better in school since the online switch because I am at home. Only 5 students strongly agreed, 16 were neutral, and then the rest of the majority disagreed or strongly disagreed. This next graph looked at the cumulative number of risk factors that was broken down by race and ethnicity. These risk factors include linguistic isolation, crowded conditions, lack of computer or internet, lack of an adult with a high school diploma or equivalent in a household, the child having a disability, and living in poverty. From this graph, we can see that students of color, particularly Latinx students, are more likely than students from other racial and ethnic groups to be exposed to multiple risk factors simultaneously. Latinx, Black, and AI/AN students are more likely to face the compounding challenges of 2 risk factors, and Latinx students are the most likely to face 3 or more risks. White and AAPI students are far more likely to face none of the risk factors we examined.
The use of invasive lockdown browsers. With the increase in online schooling, online lockdown browsers have become popular for use by professors when having students take tests. Lockdown browsers can create more anxiety for students, and the software can be faulty and have an unfortunate history of the records being stolen from them with students' private information on it. Students have also been kicked out of tests, causing them to fail. Taking tests at home will also make it impossible to accommodate students with disabilities and special needs. Lockdown browsers cause extra stress and anxiety for students, even being known to cause issues with depression. With some lockdown browsers even requiring a 360-degree view of the room, it can cause students to have even more stress as their personal spaces are invaded. Some statistics about online learning. About 20% of online students only use their phones or tablets to complete their coursework. 39% of American undergraduate students consider online college-level education to be superior to classroom learning, while 52% of American graduate students consider online college education to be better than classroom learning. E-learning can also increase the student retention rates by 25 to 60%, and 24.9% of the undergraduate students taking their entire degree online are 30 years old or older.
In this next graph, we took a survey of college students and asked them the question, moving forward post-pandemic, given the option to take a course online or in person, which would you prefer? About 65% of the students asked said they would prefer in person, while the other 35% said that they preferred online. For our final graph, we looked at how online learning has affected students' mental health, which we separated down by male and female. And as you can see by the graph, most people expressed increased feelings of stress, depression, and anxiety after the switch to online learning. with only a few students expressing increased relaxation and the minority feeling indifferent. The trend seems to be similar for both male and females.
One of the articles we read was about burnout and stress. Pre-pandemic, telecommunication was steadily growing. Once the pandemic hit, no one was prepared for how much technology would be used. Since the lockdown, screen time takes up the majority of people's days and weeks. Research has been done, and many people have stated feelings of burnout and stress. They feel detached and exhausted, therefore causing them to have negative relations with them and their work at school. Females have reported irregular sleep, stress, and depressive symptoms more than males. Not only does technology affect us mentally, but it also does physically. It disturbs our cervical spine. This is known as an eye hunch. Overall, the presence of, whether it's in work or school, of online is negatively causing pain to both our minds and our bodies.
Online learning has affected students in many different ways, some including it was hard to find spaces in homes. Kids were in all different situations in their home styles. Students were feeling like they could take on more than what they actually could, and it was overwhelming themselves and would find them struggling in midterm. Instructors sometimes had days where they would struggle with technology, and it was a situation where it was a lot thrown at everyone unexpectedly. Lastly, online courses call for a lot of motivation and self-discipline, and some students need the extra poke, and we're able to get it. Some recommendations were teachers were avoiding the use of lockdown browsers while having students take tests. I recommend teachers provide the option of in-person individual office hours. I recommend more optional group projects online for students. And lastly, I recommend that professors and staff to promote the issues of online learning.
To conclude, online learning is beneficial to some students who learn better in a quiet area. With the sudden change of the learning format, depression, anxiety, and stress have become more common amongst students. Based on gender research, the effects of online learning seem to be impacting each gender differently. The negative effects of online learning disproportionately impact students of color. Online learning benefits students by giving them flexibility in their scheduling and work. Online learning may be here to stay even if students prefer in-person learning. To wrap this up, these last two slides include our sources that were used throughout the presentation. Thank you so much.